You're not going to let Joe show us first, are you?
No, he's going to start the recording.
Oh, okay.
We have to behave ourselves now.
Yeah. No, I haven't said the speaking order yet, so nobody can say anything. The power.
Chris, my topic will complement Joe's, so
Oh, okay.
it is kind of the trailer to Joe's movie.
Is there going to be a spoiler alert, though?
Well, I don't know.
Well, you could go first if you want, Reg. Doesn't matter.
I think it will work better that way, Joe, and then you can take it away.
Yeah, actually, you're going to be second and third, but that'll be fine.
Yeah.
And there's Randy, who is going to be, you'll be fourth tonight, Randy, if that's fine with you.
Number 4? Excellent.
Yeah. Just let a few more moments pass. A slightly smaller crew tonight so far, but we've got 15 at the moment.
Peter, we can only see your glasses and your nose.
Kind of that Kilroy look, right? Right there.
Oh, your mic's off too. Peter, your mic's off.
Your hands are working, but your mic.
The microphone is not. Yeah.
You're Italian.
My wife says I'm Italian, but I'm actually Ukrainian. I don't know how that happened.
You have ancestry from the Ukraine. That's how that happened.
No, the Italian bit.
Oh, the Italian bit. Yeah.
Well, you can always be the token Italian. When I worked in one office in Vancouver, I was the token Italian.
Really?
So they just call me Giuseppe.
Perfect.
I'd like to be Italian because I love pasta.
Yeah, me too.
But being Ukrainian, you get pierogies, so that's kind of a consolation prize.
Yeah, that works well.
Yeah. I saw a joke section where a guy came on and said he is Iranian by ethnicity, but he was born in the UK, so he became Ukrainian.
Very good.
I like that.
I like that.
Works for me, yeah.
Good one, Michael.
I don't remember jokes, but that one stuck for a minute.
Everybody.
Hi, Lori.
Hey, Lori.
Laurie. Oh, there's Laurie. Hi, Laurie. Where's Diane tonight?
And has not arrived yet. No.
Hey, there's Michelle.
There, and there's Dr. Hesser. So, Jim, what's the OBG stand for? Order of the...
Sorry, I just came out of a Green Party telecon.
Oh, yeah.
I'll change that.
Yeah, the world changed a little bit, didn't it, today? Yeah.
Yeah, very disappointingly.
Yeah.
Yeah, quite a surprise, huh? My goodness me. Mm-hmm.
I was so impressed in how they were making a minority government be stable. I don't understand.
Yeah.
You won't be voting NDP then, Jim.
I don't think he did anyways.
I know, that's my point.
Not since there was a better option.
Yeah, there you go.
Dear.
No, I don't think people have learned the lessons that David Peterson taught so well. Don't go to the polls because you think you're going to win when you don't need to.
Yeah, that's going to be
Well,
something.
that election and Bob Ray came in, and he certainly wasn't expected to.
Yeah,
Hey,
wow.
ask Adrian Dix about that.
Mm-hmm.
What was his deal?
Well, didn't Dave Barrett have an early election back in the 70s too?
You usually get punished for it.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that was an early election. I don't think he needed to call it then. And of course, they were soundly shown the door, as I remember.
Hmm.
That was the year we moved to BC. I remember the comment in the high school yearbook is ICBC rates emptied the parking lot.
Oh,
Was that the red underwear election? You don't remember
Joe, I'm liking your background.
that?
Do you recognize it?
Oh yes, it's Fiji, isn't it?
Yeah,
is?
the Yasso Islands in Fiji.
Yeah. You can
Easy for you.
fabulous water. Ah, another day.
Nice. Yeah.
Another day.
The year of the eclipse.
Oh, right.
The one you didn't see and the one I did.
That's right. Don't even tell me. Don't even tell me. That was so awful. Yeah. Oh well.
It wasn't too awful to be in the Yassoas though, once you got there.
Well, no, it was quite beautiful. Yes. Quite lovely. Thank you. And Gary, you haven't got too bad a background either.
Yeah, that turned out okay.
Yeah.
So that way there.
You
Is
got a
that
better
yours?
view of space from your house.
Yeah, right. Up here, I've got this little wee narrow view facing northwest, and that's all I can see.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
Well, should we get started, I think? Looks like there's so far 19 people here. Welcome to another edition of Astro Cafe, and hope everybody is keeping well. We have Barbara was going to share some things, and then Reg wanted to say a few words, and then Joe, and then Randy, and then Reg for the anchor lap, I guess. So that's the speaking order this evening. So Barbara, are you ready to roll?
I hope so. Okay, I'll try sharing my screen and see if this works. I haven't done this for a while. It's giving me a lot of choices here. Kurt?
You're good.
There we go. Yeah, thanks. So it was just the announcement of the winners of the Astronomy Photographer of the Year came out this week. And they go into the Royal Greenwich Museum, which nobody can go into right now anyway, but for the next 6 months. So I just thought it's a little bit of eye candy in case you hadn't seen it. This picture isn't quite as good as the one behind you, Gary, but it took the £10,000 prize.
Yeah, I didn't get this.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know,
the trick is the
what's
different
interesting about-
focus between the top and bottom.
Yeah, I got that. But so what? So what?
So the trick on this one is how they did it was they used a 3D printer to make a device to hold his camera at a weird angle.
Well, is that right?
Yeah.
It was about giving it some depth of field, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
It does look three-dimensional.
There you go.
It makes the galaxy look like it's about the size of a quarter. But anyhow.
And then this one was one for the best picture in the aurora.
But that's fabulous, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is quite something.
Fantastic.
She said it was just lucky. The lady in green unexpectedly appeared.
Looks like
Wow.
an angel.
This one shows the center of the California Nebula. They liked it because of the wave action sort of thing.
Yeah, good.
Thought it was a fire picture.
So this one's a Randy picture.
Wow.
It's of Tycho, but what he did was he just altered the colors a little bit. Well, not altered them, but greatly enhanced them to show the difference between the different makeup. So the blue in here, as it says here, shows the titanium oxide, and the red shows iron oxide. That's quite the effect.
It's quite amazing. Do you
Yeah.
see the ring around Tycho?
Yeah?
So when the impact came, nothing fell right next to the crater, but got flung out for thousands of kilometers in every direction. But it jumped over the first few kilometers.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, Randy, I took a picture of the moon with an HA filter a little while ago, and it looks totally odd. Maybe you could explain someday what I'm looking at when I see when I did that.
Let's bring it up at Astro Cafe. That sounds cool.
There's an idea. Hmm.
And I think that make a great print.
Mm-hmm.
See a bedspread. This is one for the surface of the sun. So it's a
Wow.
crazy paving.
It looks like the floor of one of those Heraklion, I don't know, floors that you find in Greece.
Oh yeah.
You know. Yeah, yeah. That's amazing. Why are they almost all the same size?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
somebody
chaos
know?
theory at work.
So say it again, Gary.
That's chaos theory at work.
But it's to do with the different forces that are going to produce cells. So it's coherent within a certain area and incoherent in a bigger. So it's all the same amount of energy at each place, and it's just not that amazing
Oh,
scale size everywhere the same.
It was an 8.4 millisecond exposure. I don't know if that makes any difference.
It was bright.
So this one is sort of an interesting one. It's a picture of Albero, but what they got, all these lines are trails of satellites.
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Curse them.
They called it the prison of technology.
Yeah.
It's cool.
And this one was just a great one of the alignment of the moon and Jupiter
Isn't it? Huh?
taken last year.
There are amazing pictures of the what do you call it? The occultation? Anyway, when Mars went behind the moon on September 6th, there are wonderful
Occultation.
pictures from Europe and from South America.
Oh, neat.
Ooh.
And
Wow.
this is a polar stratospheric.
Occultation.
Wow.
Look that up. They're about 15 to 30 kilometers above the Earth. So lower than noctilucent clouds, but they only appear above 70 degrees.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, I want that one as a print.
Yes, you're right. It's gorgeous, isn't it?
Yeah.
And this one is a picture of the nebula, but they took the stars out.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And then this is the kid that's rivaling Nathan. This is an 11-year-old girl's photo of the planets in alignment down here.
Oh,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I'll have to tell Nathan he's got. And I have no idea how they did this. Looks more
I
like,
read it. I think it's actually a print that got folded up.
I think it is. Yeah, I think it's,
yeah.
yeah. So
That's interesting.
Sculpture.
that was it. I just thought, in case you hadn't seen it, there they
Yep.
are.
Thank you.
Probably not going to go to the Greenwich Museum.
So what organization was this from?
I got it off the BBC, but it's a company sponsors this every year, and then the winners get to be displayed in the Royal Greenwich Museum.
Okay. So it's not the Sky at Night BBC one, eh?
Well, actually, a couple of they have a panel that judges it, and a couple of them are from the Sky at Night.
Okay.
And for some reason, one's a comedian because it's British, so you always put a comedian on your group. But yeah, so they have a whole panel that chooses them.
Beautiful.
Well, thank you very much.
Well,
Thank you.
And maybe if you could forward that link, we could just post it on the page as well, just so we.
okay, we'll do. I can forward it either from the BBC or the one that actually tells you all the cameras and what they use. Would you rather have that one?
Sure. Well, if that's available, that would be great.
Okay.
Thanks.
Barbara, could you please I missed how much money the prize money was. It was pretty substantial.
The first prize gets £10,000.
Wow.
We should get on that.
What a lucrative hobby we have.
I was gonna say, and you can take them from all over, so be worth doing.
You got to spend 20,000 to take the picture, though.
There you go.
Exactly.
Great. Well, thanks again. So Reg, what would you like to tell us about this great evening?
Okay, just a sec here. Why does it do this? Here we are. Share. And what I want to do is go to slideshow, which is covered by everything.
There it is.
I'll play from the start.
Had it.
Okay, this is breaking news. And so what happened today? Can you see that okay? I guess last week or 2 weeks ago, James DeFrancesco sent me a letter saying that they were open to possibly allowing access to the VCO again in some form. And what I got to do here is get rid of my own screen here. Okay. So at our council meeting, I guess it was more than a week ago now, we developed a series of protocols that might be acceptable for opening up the VCO in a COVID area. And so it's hard to read these protocols, but we sent them to James on September 14th, I think. And James DeFrancesco said they were pretty good. He wanted to clarify a few things. So here are some of the features if we do open up the VCO, what sort of limitations we'd have. And one is that this is for observing and imaging, not socializing. I mean, one of the great rewards of going up to the VCO is communal sharing of things with others. And unfortunately, that cannot happen in this stage. So let's keep that in mind. And in order to make it reasonable and safe during a pandemic, is we're limiting session size to 4 members near the VCO, and occasionally an additional 2 members adjacent to the plaskett. This is normally happens when some planets are coming up earlier in the night. People want to get a shot there. And one of the 4 members would be an MIC. We just have 1 MIC rather than 2 on the hill, which is normally our regulations, because the crowd control will be less challenging. And there's hand cleanser and antibacterial wipes that will be supplied to ensure that hands and contacted surfaces are sanitized before and after use. And members will use their own personal eyepieces and will not share them with others, because an eyepiece is a great way to transmit a virus. And each attendee will bring a mask and wear it when near other members and keep a social distance of 2 meters. And people who are feeling sick, exhibiting symptoms of COVID-19, or who have, within the last 14 days, been in contact with someone known to be infected, are not permitted to attend the VCO session. So there are a few more other items in there, but that's what we were talking about. So how things might work at the VCO. We figure that in the observing shed, there's only room for 2 members at a time to go in there and reasonably keep safe distance apart. We probably have 1 person maybe operating the obsession telescope if they're interested, and probably somebody else. Usually someone brings their own telescope, camera, or binoculars, and just to savor the view from that beautiful site. And I mentioned this again, we with the hand cleanser and antibacterial wipes. There will be a kit if people have to go to the bathroom as well. And we expect that if you contact surfaces, you've got antibacterial wipes to wipe that down before you leave, and also wipe the key down after you return. And but the other thing is maintaining social distancing, obeying the other protocols is the responsibility of all the attendees. It's not on the shoulders of the MIC. The MIC is there to kind of allow us access and keep an eye on and a reminder that we have to wear masks and social distance. And the other thing is that not all the MICs are comfortable of going up during a pandemic situation, and they're under no obligation whatsoever to go up and participate or lead a session. So that is another consideration. But we have a problem with masked men. Earlier on in the year, they furtively made off with a TPO 16-inch telescope. But two past men had a plan B. And here it is here. It's a telescope that was actually discovered by Gary Sedan, and John McDonald and I saw this would be a great opportunity. And I'll tell a bit more about this. Some people already know about it. Most people do. To test it out, I put it on a Losmandy G11 mount, and it makes the mount look like a toy. Because it's so large, and I didn't dare try and track with it. So what we did was just pointed it at the North Star and took some images. But this is a Bakshi focuser. John McDonald had a really nice Williams optic focuser, but we didn't have any way to thread it onto the back plane of the telescope. So I figured this thing out, and it sort of seemed to work, because this is a picture as 15-second exposure, and there is some star movement in it, but the stars look reasonably crisp across the field. So there's a ray of hope. So, and the specifications is a 12.5-inch Ritchie-Craichan scope. OGS is a high-end telescope manufacturer who makes a lot of equipment for NASA and other educational centers and this sort of thing. It's 33 inches long, weighs 65 pounds, but once you put the focuser and camera on it, it goes up to about 75. So it has a fairly large obstruction, 4.5 inches, and it covers about 13%. And OGS maintains this is something that they use to optimize the clarity of the contrast obtained with a Ritchie-Craichan scope. It's got a 2,700 millimeter focal length, and it's a pricey thing. If it was bought new on the Paramount mount that we have, it would be worth $55,000 Canadian. So John McDonald and I paid quite a bit less than that. So we got a bit of a steal, and we're quite excited. So the reason we bought this was primarily to possibly put it up on the hill and see if others can use it while the other scope is being repaired. So today, 4 masked men returned to the VCO, and John McDonald kindly took this picture. And you can see it's now on the Paramount mount, and it's looking really happy there. And it's going to be launching a new season of astronomy at the VCO, since tomorrow is the beginning of the fall, the autumnal equinox and the fall season. So there we go. And we also have all sorts of equipment there to keep your hands clean, including rubber gloves and all this sort of stuff. So there you have it. So I'm going to stop the share now, and I guess turn it over to Chris or Joe.
Yeah, are there any questions for Reg at this point? And if not, we'll go on to Joe.
Reg, do you see this just primarily then for taking photographs rather than since we were going to run around with $500 eyepieces in each of 2 different pockets is probably unlikely.
Well, it's up to people. I know a lot of people have got their own eyepieces. We had a thing at Astro Cafe, said people to talk about eyepieces once, and people
yeah,
came with suitcases of these things. It was an amazing response. And so they are out there. And so it limits it to people who don't have that equipment. But I think it's essential that we don't share the eyepieces. And this is one way we obtain buy-in from the NRC. So there we have it.
And you put a 1 1/4 inch eyepiece in?
You can put a 1 1/4 or a 2-inch eyepiece in. Now this is I should emphasize we have to test this thing out. We have to put it on a good mount, see how it tracks and everything like that. The images might be junk. We don't really know. So this is just kind of a teaser. We'll try it out. So the next stage is we put it up today. We have to get a weather window, and a few of us will go up there and do an evaluation of it. And then if it proves to be usable, I think since the mix have not really been using the scope for quite a while, we might have a little short training sessions with them. And then when people are confident to take over, we can open it up to everybody else. And the idea here is with the sessions being so small, we aren't going to schedule it for a Saturday night or anything like that. It's when we have some favorable weather, clear skies, and an interesting MIC, or maybe somebody else requesting to go up, somebody might respond, and then we could have a little impromptu parties of 4 or possibly 6, something like that. So that's the idea there.
Well, thanks for jumping on that. I think that's a noble effort, whether it's 100% or not in the end after you do the evaluation. I still think it's a hell of a nice idea on behalf of other people. Thank you.
Can I share a little bit more about the scope, Reg?
Pardon me?
Can I share a little bit more about the scope?
Sure, yes, go ahead, Gary.
So this is a quality piece of gear. It's a Ritchie Chrétien scope. And the reason we got it is because the fellow that had it before us did some unauthorized modifications to it, which doesn't affect the optics at all. And it made it that really lowered the price of the scope. So we got it at a decent price. And I'm very excited about it because you know how people go around looking for orphan cats? I go around looking for orphan telescopes. And this is my 3rd one. And this was just too good to pass up. This is a brilliant move by Reg and John to buy this machine. And the main mirror has a RMS wavelength, I think, Reg, do you remember the figure?
Well, normally a good scope would be 1/10 of a wavelength. The 16-inch telescope in the dome at the center of the universe is 1/27th of a wavelength. This is figured to 1/31st of a wavelength. So a very highly figured scope.
Astoundingly good scope that we now have, that Reg and John now have mounted up there. So, and we have the papers to prove it. So it's extremely exciting to have this machine. Even if it's not aligned right now, we can align it and get it going pretty good. I'm pretty optimistic this is going to be just fine.
Yeah, with that smooth a mirror, it should be a really good planetary scope.
Yeah. It's a good size too.
I'm hoping for that. I must say it would be really fun to try getting the planets that are up there now, and including Mars, which is getting so close to us. That would be really fun to get in that scope.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. So Joe, I think you will be up then.
Okay. Well, I have a fun little time-lapse video to show you of our efforts today. Now I just have to find the share button. There it is. It's been a while since I did this. Okay. So here we are, I'll just voice over it. So here we are pulling into the driveway into the Victoria Centre Observatory and passing the 48-inch. And for those who are foreigners or have not visited the Victoria Centre Observatory site, that is a sort of a residence that visiting astronomers use if they're going to be using the NRC site. I assume there's no one in there right now. And then our parking lot and our little observatory, which officially is not an observatory, it's a storage shed, just in case anyone asks you. And the scope in question all crated up in the back of Reg's car. So now you get to see us fly around. All these old men are moving pretty fast.
Where was the telescope before Victoria?
Sierra Vista, Arizona.
So we just got the mount set up, and now we put the telescope on. Everything went beautifully and rather quickly.
We're getting an adapter made to connect the focuser to the scope.
Yeah.
But Reg's genius arrangement here will do for now.
It didn't feel that fast when we did it.
No.
That's a little
And we just manually park the scope. We don't have the mount all set up the way it's supposed to yet, but it's all working fine. And we the big benefit is today we got it mounted properly and we got it balanced. And we'll have to wait to finish off the setup until we get a dark night with reasonable weather.
That's a little focus motor at the front there if we choose to use that.
That's this here.
Yeah.
So this is the secondary in here. And when you get up there and you have a look at it up close, it does look a little funky because you'll see a bunch of holes drilled in it. And that's the result of the former owner reconfiguring it a couple of times. But it's just a steel tube and it works fine.
It works fine. It's in good shape. The optics appear to be perfect.
There we go.
Thanks for taking that, Joe.
Okay. Now I just have to be able to stop the share somehow.
And then any further questions for any of the crew? I guess all four of you are here this evening, so I don't know if anybody else wants to comment on that. But thank you for doing that and sharing that with us.
Yeah, kind of fun.
So as long as we have our own eyepiece, then we can put in the lottery system to go up on when it opens?
We haven't worked that out yet. I think what's going to happen is that somebody will put out a notice, I'm going up to the hill in MIC and request for interest, and people who are hanging on to the end of their email might respond quickly. But it's could be that we'll see how that works, and if people start monopolizing the observing time, we'll have to revisit it and develop a more appropriate protocol going forward.
There always seem to be sort of two groups. One would go up for, say, till midnight, and then the heavy duty imagers would stick around till dawn. And so is there going to be a sign in, sign out sort of setup for that?
It's going to be the same way that we had with the other system. Anybody who wants to come up has to go on the active observers Hill Obs list and sign in and say that they will be there. And that's their way of registering that they will be on the hill. And that gives us a capacity for contact tracing if a problem arises with the pandemic. And then normally what happens is that the MIC will write up about a little bit of an activity of who was there, what objects were seen, and then when they leave the hill. And we'll see if that's sufficient documentation.
And I guess what we'll want to ask this time around too is if anybody signs up and then can't go, to let people know, because if there are more people than spaces, then we can, I guess we could consider doing some sort of wait list. I don't know how that would work, but.
Well, we'll give it a
Yeah,
go.
that sounds like we might have to go that way. And I think just let the first 4 people sign up or 6 people sign up if there's 2 people that want to use the parking lot at the Plaskett, and see how it runs. We tried to avoid having too many rules to start with. We'll just have to see how it runs.
Yeah, it's exciting news.
It is.
So let's hope we can get the scope working, and then and final approval can be given and all that. So, but thanks again to the crew. Great. So Randy, I think you wanted to update us on the project you've been working on for quite some time now, and
Here we go.
so you may carry on.
Well, I'm just so excited that you guys got that telescope up there on the hill. But this is the absolute opposite in terms of technology, because my most difficult thing was putting some tape up on a window.
Randy, you're very cool. You know that? Seriously, you are.
So, are you going to work? Come on, guy. There we go. So, everybody, I hope, is aware that the Earth's rotational axis is at an angle to the plane that it orbits the sun, and it is over human time scale. It's a constant. It takes, I think, something like 20,000 years for it to process around. So we are at the autumnal equinox now. That means that the sun is right over the equator, and we have equal day and night. And if you take a look at the altitude of the sun at noon, first of all, the sun will be south, and the altitude will be 90 degrees minus the latitude. But if you go back 3 months, then we're at maximum tilt at that time. So the sun will be over the what's called the Tropic of Cancer at 23.4 degrees. And so we get a much longer day and shorter night in the Northern Hemisphere. And a few days before that, the sun is a bit lower, and a few days after it, the sun is a bit lower. But on the summer solstice, then the sun will be right over 23.41 degrees. And I've been playing around with this sort of thing for a long time. This was, I think, about 15 years ago. I told my kids I wanted a sundial, but not one that has any markings on it. So it's just, we went to the garden store and I got this flat slab and I drilled a hole in it and put in a rod, a gnomon. It's only 20 centimeters long, but here you see May 5th, and every 15 minutes I put a dot, and on June 9th, you see that the dots are closer to the rod. And if I kept doing this, I would see that by June 2021, it would be at its shortest, because the shadow is the anti-sun, right? So that point up there to this point goes and points straight at where the sun is. Well, this year, this is my office. It's actually a hallway. And I have these 2 oh my goodness, I got these two skylights. One you can see there. There's another one over here, and there's the sun coming through. This was a bit later in the afternoon, but at noon, it shines like crazy right next to where I was working. So how could I but do some measurements, right? So instead of a rod coming out of the floor, all you need is something that's going to make a shadow. And, you know, I put in one little arrow. So this is pointing north-ish, okay? But it was very hard to see that shadow. This is about 2 meters up, 2.1 meters up from the floor. So what I found is I needed 2 pieces of tape and 3 pieces of tape to make a nice little V on the floor. And I don't know why I decided to mark it every minute from 1 o'clock on, but that was what I started doing. So this is a nice picture of my bald spot, and I just taped a piece of paper to the floor. This is a very rough measure of south to north, but my house is was about 10 degrees off axis, and that's what the shadow looks like. And so you can see this was June 3rd, and you know, this is 13, 12, 13, 13, 13, 14. Every minute, I just put my cell phone in front of me, and the time on the cell phone is really good. And it's interesting how fast that bloody shadow moves. You don't think that you can see like 10 or 20 seconds of motion of the sun, but when you do this, it's really whipping along. Okay, so here's kind of a time lapse. Here's June 4th. I put the paper more or less in the same place. June 29. Okay, so after June 20th, and it was up at its shallowest, then I changed color to red. And I put a circle around what it's supposed to be noon. So it started at 13:11, 13:12, 13:13, 13:14. Here we are on July 4th, and then I stopped on July 13th. I figured there was something nice and symmetrical about that. So I also put in green, this is where the time 13:15 is, starting on May 27th up to July 20th, and then, no, June 20th, and then finishing on July 13th. So that is just one of these arcs. And then I took this photograph with the rulers and tried to get it as level as possible. This ruler, this meter stick, starts right at the point below that that bit of tape on the skylight. So I used a plumb bob to mark a point on the ground with. I just put some tape and a dot, and then along the axis of the house, because the floor is just got these nice straight lines that I could go along, I taped down this tape measure. Then I put this other one at 90 degrees, and I took a photograph of it, and then I brought it into CorelDRAW, and oh, how many points is there? 450 points, something like that. That was the only unpleasant part of this whole project, was digitizing all of these points. And I'm sure there's a better way to do it than the way I did it, but there you go. So this is just the opposite way of doing it. This person, Robert Newfer, I just found this looking up things on the web. Anyway, he set up a camera for a full year, took a picture every minute So there's 180,000 photos. This is every 15 minutes. And so this is going to be only about 10 or 12,000 photos of the sun. But every 15 minutes, he took a picture. And you can see when there are clouds. He's got pretty good daylight where he lives. Anyway, my time series is the shadows when the sun is in something like this, okay? Just so that you get an idea of what's actually going on. Oh, why does the sun make this figure 8, the analemma, I hear you ask? Well, the up and down, that is the just the sun going from here, the summer high latitude, so the sun is way up high in the sky at noon, and there's the winter. So that's going up and down, and then the back and forth is because the Earth's orbit is not circular; it's elliptical, and so while June 20th is the summer solstice, July 4th is the perihelion. That means that the Earth is closer to the sun, it's moving faster around the July 4th than it is in the winter. It's funny that we are wrong. It's the aphelion. We are further away in the northern hemisphere summer than we are in the northern hemisphere winter. The temperature is all because of the tilt. It's very little to do with how close or far we are from the sun. But it means that the Earth is moving slower, and so it takes a bit longer, a bit more rotation of the Earth. The Earth spins around at a constant speed, but it's going around the Earth a bit slower in the summer than it is in the winter. And so each day gets a bit longer, and the noon is moving every few days. It's moving back a minute, but then it's going to turn around and come back the other way. So it balances out through the year. Okay, so I'm not going to show a whole bunch of math, but you know, this is just X, Y, Z. So Z is how high from basically the point of that tape on the ceiling, that's the gnomon, down to the floor. And that's, I measured with the plumb bob, put a piece of tape on the floor. So that's the Z, and I measured it to about 1 millimeter accuracy, I figure. I measured it a couple of times. Then we have Y and X. And so one thing that's interesting is this angle theta. And the other, but more important one, I call it phi, but that is the altitude of the sun. Okay, that's the same as when we say alt-azimuth. So theta would be the azimuth, but it's with respect to the arbitrary direction that they built my house on. But what is very familiar to all of you who use an alt-azimuth mount for your telescope, that is how high the sun is in angle, okay? So same picture, but now looking down, that's the Y, the X. Those are two things I can measure. So I have the date, I have the time, I have X, Y, and I've measured Z, which is a constant for all of these pictures. So there you see it in an oblique view. This is looking straight down. And then what is this a plot of? This is the June day. So from 1 to 30, you know, 20 just means June 20th. But it started at -4, that's May 27th, and it goes up to June 43rd, and that is going to be July 13th. Okay, so that just makes a nice, easy measure there. And this is the 13-minute. So over here is 1 o'clock, 1300 hours. Here is 1315, 1320. And the colors is the sun altitude, that angle phi, so it's quite a bit lower in earlier days and in later days, but you see each day it gets higher and higher, and then somewhere around here where noon is, that's where it's at its highest. And you can see that there is this kind of point somewhere in here where the sun is at its absolute highest, and that is going to be the solstice. Okay, so that's how I go from this to this. And here we see it in 3D, and I did this, but what will be much, much better is if I bring this up. Does this work over Zoom? Can you see?
Mm.
It's moving? Okay, so those are all my measurements, and the sun altitude, that phi angle, that is the color. Okay, so where it's white, it's at its highest, and then down here, the angle is a lot lower. When we look just at the minutes, each day it goes up and down, and you know, it's a bit bumpy, but that's why you take lots of measurements so that you can average them out. When we take a look at the day, I'm going to go this way. This is closer to what it looks like. So there's June 1st, and you can see somewhere around here is going to be the solstice, and then the sun dips down. Okay, does that all make sense? Now, how do you find that point? Well, I wrote a Python program, and I fit a paraboloid, a two-dimensional parabola to this. Why? For the people who care, it's the simplest second-order three-dimensional curve, which will, it's an approximation. It's the actual shape, I don't even know what you would call the shape, but I fit it with a second-order function. So there is the curve, and that's a least squares fit. And then you take the equation of that blue grid, and what did I get? Well, the solstice, I got about 90 minutes off. I think that's pretty good. And the latitude, I got about 1/3 of a degree shallow, and I think that's because of the diameter of the sun. It's very hard to decide where actually the point of that shadow was. And I think in retrospect, I saw Bill Nye. Bill Nye is crazy about sundials, by the way. Bill Nye, the science guy. And I think from something he said, it's much better to use a sphere. If I hung a sphere by tape from the window, then it doesn't matter which way the sun is coming, it would always cast the same sort of shadow. And I could just use the center of the circle that is cast. And I think that would have been much, much better. Anyway, next year, okay? My daughter, my 26-year-old daughter, said to one of her colleagues that I mope around when the sun wasn't out. So she drew me a sun and taped it up on the window for when it's cloudy. There you go. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Yay.
Questions for Randy?
Yeah, the guy in Switzerland, could you just grab his data for the segment that you measured and analyze that?
Cool idea. Sure.
He has all those measurements. May as well make use of it.
Well, I mean, no, he just took a video. I mean,
Yeah.
he's placed together a video. It's just a YouTube, and you could just go frame by frame and digitize it. He didn't measure them like that. Those are images. That wasn't. But in a way, you know, I use the sextant now quite a bit, and there's a huge difference. You measure to the edge of the sun. Now, why does a star, you know, just this ball of gas, have such a hard edge, that is an amazing story where you've got this transition from the photosphere to the corona. But the sun has a very hard edge. And so when you're doing navigation, you don't use the shadow, which is always fuzzy. You measure from the horizon to the bottom or the top of the sun, and then you look up in the table what the diameter of the sun is that day, and then you can get to the middle. Looking at the sun is way, way more accurate than looking at the shadow. And we know about that with the, you know, the lunar eclipse. You've got that penumbra. It's very hard to get a nice, sharp shadow.
I have a question for the analemma experts out there. Is the crossover point determined by the eccentricity of the Earth's orbit?
It is a very, very well studied thing, and when you look at the stuff, there's an eccentricity term and there is an obliquity term.
Mm-hmm.
But where that crossover is, I don't know.
If our orbit was circular, would that be would that simply be there would be no crossover? I expect. Is that right?
Yes, I think then it would just go up and down.
Randy, John McDonald here. I've got a comment for you. I think it'll be important not to let word of your wonderful discoveries get out, because the the scientific community has gotten really used to being able to ask for money to buy very, very expensive equipment. And, this will kind of burst that balloon if people realize you can do this kind of science, with your pencil and paper on the floor under your skylight. I think this is dangerous stuff.
It's awesome.
I'm so taken by reading about the ancients and how well they understood things. And, I've got this.
It's very neat to see what you can do this way.
I have this 30-year time series of the moon, which I'm continuing.
Mm-hmm.
And I keep finding little nuances. I mean, you know how it works in science. The stuff that you're bored with is the stuff that is easy to explain. You don't care too much about that. You don't care about the stuff that's in the noise. It's just the stuff at the limit, the signal to noise limit. And that part of my joy in these sorts of projects is to try to tease some real science out of noisy data, simply gathered noisy data.
Good for you.
Thanks for being an audience for me. It really helps me get motivated to work up the data. I did not want to pass the autumn equinox without having finished the analysis of my summer solstice.
Very interesting. Well, thanks for sharing that, Randy.
Good for you.
Reg, did you have some?
I'll just quickly go through some of the stuff that we found.
Because I think we got some Edmonton photos, did we not?
We did, thanks to Dave Robinson. And I think I'll go on to this one. Share. And I'll get rid of pictures of me. And we'll go here. So here's Astro Cafe. Can you see that?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, so this is for Monday, September 21st. But we never really got to talk about the offerings on the 14th because Phil Gross talked. So first of all, on Saturday night was the FDAO virtual DAO star party. And I was wondering if Lori wanted to make a comment about how that went.
Thanks, Reg, and I'm sorry, I just didn't get done last week, but it was great. We had Robert Conrad and Andrew Cresa, who'd done one of the GA Light programs on. We invited them to give a presentation on Mars, and it was terrific. Like, it was just they kind of took turns giving some of the data. It was really very clear and concise, and definitely not too high a level. I actually understood most of it, which was good, and really learned a lot. They're very, very nice people to have present to us. So I would suggest sometime if we were having trouble finding speakers, the two of them would help out anytime in our group. That would be great. So we had a good, and they spoke long enough with everybody kind of just simply hanging on. It was not a problem at all. But we started to what we want to do is put up photographs from the Plaskett telescope that were taken at the Plaskett, and for showing some of the things that, if we were up there on a Saturday night right now or anything like that, this is what we would be looking at in the sky. So that's what we started to do as well. The next one, I'll just go on ahead if I can. The next one is in October, and I believe it's the 21st, and that will also be our FDAO annual meeting that we have to have. And we're still not quite sure exactly how we're going to do the voting, but we'll figure that one out. And Luke Smart is going to be our speaker, who's the director of the DAO right now, and he's going to be talking about what's going to happen in the next 10 years up at the hill, or in Canadian astrophotography. So everybody is welcome. We'll make sure that we get the link out to people, and we hope that you will join in for sure.
Are you video taping these or recording them at all, these sessions?
We didn't, and we realized at the end that we hadn't. But so the next ones we will. Yes, we'll make sure that we do. I felt very badly that we hadn't done that. Yeah.
Well, I think it's great you're doing that. Unfortunately, Saturday nights I'm not always available.
Yeah.
But I saw these guys give their talk at the GA, and they were so intense and so keen on the thing. It was kind of contagious. I think.
Well, they were. It was the same thing. You just couldn't come away with with them kind of giving all that information. Dorothy was in, and Diane Bell was in, and I think they would tell you kind of the same thing. So, yeah.
Great. Good stuff. Thanks very much, Laurie. Well, there's another offering as well. Haroon is associated with the UVic Observatory Open House. They had a spring and a summer session on Zoom, and it's just resumed. And the kickoff is going to be Dr. Doug Simons, who is the executive director of the Canadian French Hawaiian Telescope. And he's going to do a retrospective of the past 40 years. And that should be really great. And that is going to be taking place this Wednesday on the 23rd. And this link here will work for every one of their weekly shows, starting at 7:30, the Zoom thing on Wednesdays from UVic. So that's a great offering from Haroon, and towards every Monday he tries to get something out to me so I can promote it here. So now we got some images from thanks to Dave. The first one is from Arnold Rivera, and we showed his images before. And he's got a special type of telescope called the Celestron RASC. It's an 8-inch telescope with a very fast f2 roughly focal ratio. And he took this image of these two and he gives a talk about them. They're apparently the first objects in the Observer's Handbook Deep Sky Challenge list. So I guess they are pretty hard to see. And it's fairly large, nearly a degree across, and very faint mission nebulas. And so he did good there. But what this was an 11-minute exposure. So, but that's with a very fast camera. And then we had Abdul Anwar. I should ask Dave, is it Abdur or is it Abdul? Do you know?
It's Abdul.
Okay.
Abdul.
Okay, so I see he had a gorgeous picture of Mars here, and we've had another Martian photographer in John McDonald, and this is his great picture as well. His John's picture was taken on the 11th of September, and I just want you to notice this little feature here, which is just astonishing, the detail from John's 8-inch telescope. And that's what Abdul normally used, but that little thing I showed you has moved on because he took this on the 14th. That's 3 days later, as it shows the rotation of Mars. And Abdul used to have a C8, that's an 8-inch Schmidt-Cassegrain telescope. Now he's got an 11-inch, and this is the first time using it. So I think we got great stuff going on. And I don't know, maybe a collaboration between John and Abdul, we can get kind of a real nice continuous rotation of Mars here. So I hope we both get great clear skies. The one thing is that, John, you might be interested, he took 337,000 frames and stacked 84,000 of them. That must have taken a little bit of computer time to process that. So I don't know if his computer melted down. At any rate, that's that. And then if we go to the previous week, we had this beautiful shot from Abdul, not Abdur, Abdul Anwar. And he took this with an f3.9 reflector. And this is kind of an 8-inch. It's kind of similar to the size of scope that Nelson has donated. Nelson and Bruno have donated to the club. And it's actually sitting up in the VCO right now in a really nice case. And somebody might want to pull that out and play with it because he gets a really nice wide angle shot. And it's just a gorgeous picture. But I didn't know much about, this is called the Cygnus Wall. So I went to Wikipedia and they have another picture. This guy had a little bit different type of scope and a lot longer exposure, but it's the very same area, and I had a lot of fun flipping back and forth between the two. So if you go to this thing, you might want to compare the two. Just really beautiful work. And then these images here were taken by Massimo Torri. Now, do you want to say anything about him? You know Massimo, do you?
Yeah, Massimo's a physicist from the U of A. He's been a longtime member of the RASC in Edmonton. He used to run the images night at the regular meetings, but he backed off of that for a while. But he's started to get back into it, so I expect we'll see some more stuff from Massimo before too long. Yeah,
it's great. There's a picture of Triton, and then there's the picture of the moons of Uranus. Really amazing stuff.
There's quite a discussion on the website in Edmonton about how to do that, to get that, and it requires actually softening up your exposure a little bit in order to get the moons. If you try to get it with a really sharp, long exposure, it doesn't work so well. So he had quite an interesting technique for getting those to come out.
Well, it's just great. And this is the first picture, I guess it's the mono picture of detail of Mars from the September 11th shot that John has. It just strikes me that with all of this great planetary work going on, it would be kind of neat to have kind of a Zoom session between the planetary experts of both our club and Edmonton sometime and share their techniques, because I think these guys are on the same wavelength. John, did you have any comments on these planetary images?
No, just that it's fun to do. It's also more challenging than, in some ways, than I was expecting. The real problem is getting good seeing. Because so many nights everything looks good. Last night, for instance, I got up in the middle of the night and got some video of Mars and Jupiter and Saturn. But the seeing just wasn't the greatest. I mean, it was a beautiful night. Looking at them visually, they were wonderful, but you need everything to conspire to be good to get those really sharp images.
John, it's called Lucky Seeing with 84,000 frames that he took. Would there be some really good frames, or if it's lousy seeing, it's lousy seeing? Like what's the scoop there?
Yes, if you have lots and lots of frames, what the software does is it looks for correlations, and it'll find places where the things really line up well. I'm not quite sure how he would get so many frames unless he did it for a similar phase in different times, because the cameras can only go so fast.
John, he gave a bit more elaborate description that I'll forward to you. I didn't want to put it on the website.
Okay, I'd be interested to know just how he did that, because
he had to derotate the image a little bit. Yeah.
What was that, Dave?
He had to derotate the image a little bit because they were taking over quite a long time span.
Yeah, that's what I thought would have to be. So my picture is sort of what you can get in one go. To get a color picture, you have to take, however many frames you're going to take. I took 1,000 for each color.
Yeah.
And you can't really waste a lot of time doing it, because if you do, the planet rotates while you're doing that. Now you can fix the rotation to some extent with this WinJupos program, but you can't fix the fact that if the object you're interested in rotates out of the field, you can't do anything about that.
Yeah, I think you get a little blurry around the edges, the leading and trailing edges. Yeah.
But you can see this little feature here. I don't blame Percival Lowell for thinking there are canals on Mars. You see stuff like that ghost in and out. So it's great stuff. Thanks very much for that. I just wanted to end with this thing about what's happening at RASC. I hope everybody's getting this email. It's so useful. The first thing here, they have a whole pile of things from the various clubs. The one for the Atlantic Canada had Indigenous Star Knowledge Symposium, and it occurred 3 hours before our thing began today. There's
Sorry, Reg, can I just talk about that?
Yeah.
For a minute. I was on the program for the Indigenous education, and so was Jim Hesser. Right, Jim? Are you still there? And it was really, really interesting to get the perspective of the Indigenous, in the way that the Indigenous people are looking at astronomy and star stories and what we have to do, and how protocols need to be met, and that you only tell stories at some times in the year and you don't tell some stories, and that you need to have you need to be kind of granted permission. There's lots and lots of things that I really honestly didn't know, and learned a lot today. And they're having something on the like today for the equinox. They're having another one on the solstice, and then another one in spring, and another one at the summer solstice. So it'd be really interesting to keep looking at those. Would you say, Jim?
Yes, it was very well done, and with people, 2 people in Australia,
Yeah.
and 4 or 5 people in North America, including Wilford Buck. It was very well done.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, back to you, Chris.
Just on that note of Aboriginal astronomy, I saw something on the web the other day that Australia a few days ago released 2 new coins with Aboriginal astronomical themes. They're quite colorful. You can look them up on australiangeographic.com.au. One is the 7 Sisters, and I forget what the other one is. They're quite striking.
Great. Well, thank you for our presentations this evening. Are there any concluding comments?
I'm curious if any of you had the opportunity to watch the retrospective of the Vox Humana concerts in the Dome, which premiered last night.
Yes, I watched the first half of it. I had to leave after first half, but it was good.
Yeah, it was good, and my understanding is it's going to remain on YouTube for quite some time. So it's really worth watching. It's really quite amazing what they've accomplished over the decade they've been doing these concerts.
Well, thank you for that information.
Beautiful, beautiful music. Yeah.
Yeah, I suspect though that we're not going to hear much this year. It looks like our entire season for the Victoria Choral Society is canceled. We are not going to be doing any rehearsing or anything until sometime, maybe middle next year.
Mm-hmm.
I really miss the singing, I'll tell you.
Join the Philharmonic.
My wife says it's the first time in almost 40 years that she hasn't had Tuesday night rehearsals starting in the fall.
Performing arts are in terrible shape right now.
Yeah, yeah, it's tough. Yeah.
Not sure what to do about that.
No. So, yeah. Any final comments? So just a reminder, we'll be back next week. So if you have find something, let us know. And if there isn't anything else, I guess we'll call it an evening.
Hey, Nathan, can you make it roll?
Yes, there. There we go.
There we go.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Good night, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Right.